Prague off the beaten track. Vít Pohanka takes you away from the crowds to the city's hidden gems.
Hello and welcome to Prague off the beaten track, now part of Czechcast. I've got something a little special for you today, because in this episode we won't be visiting just one place or one neighborhood. Instead, I've decided to take you along for a tram ride. Yes, you heard that right, a tram ride, or streetcar ride, as some American listeners might say. Because I think it's one of the most natural and actually quite unique ways to get to know Prague. Even when you pass through very familiar, very touristic places, they can look surprisingly different when you see them from a tram window, moving tram window, at a street level, in motion, as part of everyday life. And I decided to take Tram 22. It's one of Prague's longest and I think most iconic routes. It stretches over 20 kilometers from Bílá Hora in the west to Hostivař in the east. It's not technically the very longest line in the network of Prague, but it's certainly among the longest journeys that you can take by tram in Prague. So I'm starting my journey here at Bílá Hora on the western, maybe northwestern edge of the city. Just next to me, or not far from here, is Obora Hvězda. In English, you could call it the Star Game Reserve. It's beautiful and not very well known place, a forest park laid out around a Renaissance hunting lodge shaped like a six-pointed star. Normally this would be a perfect spot for a walk, and maybe I will actually record one of the episodes of Prague of the Beaten Track here, but not today, because I'm not here to stroll through Obora Hvězda or to talk about the Battle of White Mountain, which took place nearby and changed history for Czechia for several centuries. I'll save that for some other time, and now I'm getting on the Tram 22. Now, let me just note at the start that I'm traveling on a winter day with grey skies and a bit of trouble on the roads. There's ice in places, traffic is slow, some connections are actually not running at all, and the weather isn't exactly inviting. But I think, in a way, that's the point. This isn't Prague on a perfect postcard day. It's Prague as it is. Trams running, people getting on and off. The city carrying on with everyday life. And that's exactly what this trip is about. Experiencing Prague not as a highlight reel, but as a lived-in city.
Pohořelec. Příští zastávka Brusnice.
So, we're now passing through Pohořelec, a place that has long served as a kind of gateway into Prague. For centuries, pilgrims walked this way toward monasteries and churches. Soldiers probably marched through on their way to Prague Castle, and even condemned prisoners, as I read, were led along this route toward execution sites outside the city walls. Pohořelec was, I think, kind of threshold between countryside and the city, especially in the medieval times, and you could very well say that it was also a threshold between hope and fear, arrival and departure. But today, Tram 22 simply glides through, casually crossing a place layered with centuries of footsteps and stories.
Pražský hrad. Next stop Prague Castle.
And now, almost without warning, Pražský hrad or Prague Castle appears outside a window, or rather St. Vitus Cathedral, which is the most visible, obviously, building. And I think this really is one of the most fascinating things about Tram 22. You don't climb, you don't queue, you simply glide past the seat of Czech kings, emperors and now presidents. From a moving tram, the castle, I would say, feels less like a monument, more like a living part of the city, watched daily by commuters, but of course many tourists and locals alike. I think few cities in the world let you pass their most powerful symbol so casually, at street level, on your way across town.
Malostranská. Přestop na metro. Příští zastávka Malostranské náměstí.
So now we've descended toward Malá Strana, following a narrow, winding track that barely feels like a road at all, and at moments it almost seems too tight even for a tram. We arrive at Malostranská station, where you can change to the metro, obviously, if you need to. There are a few stops like that on this line. And ahead of us, the scenery shifts, I would say, significantly, because I can already see the barrack houses. Some of them are palaces. There are some embassies around. And, of course, the nice, if they are well kept, nice facades of Malá Strana open up, and the tram slips straight into the heart of historic part, and probably the most picturesque part of Prague.
Malostranské náměstí.
So, almost without warning, I would say, we rolled straight onto Malostranské náměstí, one of those places where Prague's history suddenly feels almost overwhelming. The square opens up just enough to let you look up, and there it is, the monumental St. Nicholas Church, a masterpiece of high baroque with its massive dome and bell tower dominating the space. From the tram, you get this perfect, even if fleeting view. And of course there are other palaces, church towers, and then you're already moving on down the Karmelitská street past the building of Ministry of Education, and off we go. Now, as the tram pulls away, we cross the Vltava on Mostlegi, the Legionnaires' Bridge, and the city suddenly opens up. To the right, almost perfectly framed, stands the Národní divadlo, its gilded roof catching the light even on a grey day like this. This is one of those unmistakably Prague moments. River below, history on both banks, and a tram quietly carrying people across the heart of the city. The National Theatre, of course, isn't just a landmark here. It's a symbol of Czech culture and, I think, identity. And from the moving tram, it feels kind of both monumental and surprisingly close, everyday scene. You know, nothing extraordinary, yet it is, in a way.
Národní třída. Přestup na metro. Příští zastávka Karlovo náměstí.
So we traveled for a few minutes down the Národní třída, a street that carries a weight far greater than its length. This is where the Velvet Revolution began in November 1989, when a peaceful student demonstration was brutally suppressed, setting off the chain of events that led to the fall of communism in Czechoslovakia. Today, this tram, when I look around, glides past cafes. There are some theatres around here, and of course shops. And I think Národní třída remains a place of memory, a reminder that history here didn't just happen in palaces, but right on the street. And just a few minutes later, the tram opens into Karlovo náměstí, Charles Square, one of the largest medieval squares in Europe. It was laid out in the 14th century by Emperor Charles IV. I suppose he didn't lay it out himself, but yet people laid it out. It was meant to be a grand marketplace, which it was for quite a long time. And its sheer size is still surprising today, even though it's mostly a park. And even from the tram, I think you can grasp its scale. It's a really vast green park, well, not very green now in winter, surrounded by traffic, hospitals, offices, and everyday life. I really suggest a walk here if you have the time. Now, as the tram leaves the city center behind, it begins to climb gently into Vinohrady, a neighborhood that feels, I would say, calmer, wider, and more residential. Of course, this is late 19th, early 20th century Prague, elegant apartment buildings, tree-lined streets, cafes on the corners, and the pace of life that's noticeably less hectic than downtown. You can sense that. Yes, we just arrived to IP Pavlova, one of the main stations here, which is a bit busy, of course, because, again, you can change for the metro, but I think that you can definitely sense that we've moved from historic spectacle to a part of the city where people simply live and work. And now the tram arrived at Náměstí Míru, dominated by the neo-Gothic church of St. Ludmila, its twin towers rising sharply above the square. It's one of the most recognizable landmarks of Vinohrady, I think a meeting point as well, a transport hub, because there are a lot of trams coming here, and a reminder of how quickly Prague can change character, all within a single tram ride. So we are now at Kubánské náměstí. This is a square where markets are often held, though not today. It's just a normal weekday. No market today. So you can feel the city kind of shifting when you moved here from Vinohrady, because now we are in Vršovice. It's generally a zone of broader streets, apartment blocks. There are some factories too, Slavia, football team, soccer team, stadium. But there's also kind of steady local life that you can observe around. This is what used to be Outer Prague, the edge of the city. Today, it's not part of the center, maybe wider center, but it's definitely part of the city, you know, lived in, connected and busy, but in a quiet, everyday way. And as the tram continues east, we are already heading toward Strašnice, a neighborhood perhaps best known, unfortunately, in minds of many people in Prague for its crematorium, even though it's actually a very pleasant and livable part of Prague. And then we move on to Zahradní město, literally the garden city. Let me mention that I stayed here myself for a few months once, and I remember it as a genuinely nice place to live. It's kind of green, calm, well-connected. It's a reminder that Tram 22 doesn't just link monuments and history, but also the everyday residential Prague where life quietly unfolds. So this is where I'm getting off the tram. After more than an hour on board, journey on Tram 22 comes to an end here in Hostivař. I've crossed the city from west to east, from historic battlefields and castles to residential neighborhoods and everyday Prague. I'll probably be heading back toward the center again, probably on a Tram 22 again. As always, you'll find more information and photographs from this journey on the Prague of the Beaten Track page on the Radio Prague International website. While you are there, you can check many other stories. And of course, you can check latest episodes of Czechcast, which is a kind of umbrella podcast for Prague of the Beaten Track too. So, thanks for riding along. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay curious. And as we say in Czech, naslyšenou.
Prague off the beaten track. Vít Bohanka takes you away from the crowds to the city's hidden gems.